Hey folks, Rue here. Just wanted to let you know that this episode of Ruel's Running Podcast is sponsored by Health IQ, an insurance company that helps health-conscious people get special life insurance rates. Health IQ can save the listeners of Ruel's Running Podcast up to 33% because physically active people have a 56% lower risk of heart disease, a 20% lower risk of cancer, and a 58% lower risk of diabetes compared to people who are inactive. Health IQ uses science and data to secure lower rates on life insurance for health-conscious people, including runners, cyclists, strength trainers, and more. To see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/Ruel or mention the promo code RUEL when you talk to a Health IQ agent.
Podcasting from somewhere in the San Francisco Bay Area, the birthplace of Bruce Lee, the iPhone, and the bendy straw. This is Ruel's Running Podcast, a podcast about running, health, family, play, and an NSNG lifestyle. And now, here's your host, Ruel.
There was a dream a million miles away. There was fire in
Amazon.com. You know, I won't be surprised if more and more stuff that I shop for, buy, and get shipped to my home comes from Amazon. It's just a reality, right? And if this is your reality, go to ruelsrunning.com, click through to the Amazon banner to get to Amazon. Why am I asking you to do so? Well, it is a no-cost-to-you way. If you like listening to Ruel's Running Podcast, it is a way that you can help the show out without spending more than you've already spent while shopping at the good folks at Amazon.com. So help us out. Go to ruelsrunning.com, click through to the Amazon.com site, and shop, connect, and enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to Ruel's Running Podcast. I'm your host, Ruel Abadam. Glad you're here. Glad you tuned in. If you are a new listener, welcome. Thanks for coming on and finding out what this little silly show is about. And it is a silly show, by the way. So don't get any ideas. Don't think that this is some fancy schmancy polished production, because you would be wrong, my friend. And if you are a return listener, welcome back, guys. So let's see, it's 2018. This is probably the third episode of the new year. It's still kind of new, still has that New Year smell, right? Yeah, and we still got the plastic on the seats, and some paper over the flooring. Wheels are still kind of shiny. Yeah, and when you pop open that trunk, it's just pristine. So, as you can tell, the music hasn't changed on the podcast, and as you can tell, the artwork hasn't changed either. Just still settling into getting back into the flow of things. I didn't take into consideration the holiday time and holiday vacation and all that good stuff that took me away from fixating on things like the podcast, artwork, and music. So I'm going to just save my sanity and not stress over any of that type of stuff. It is still stuff that I want to do, and I'll flow into it naturally somehow when things sort of start to fit in and fall into place, if that even makes sense. Now, hope everything's going well with everybody. I hope that everyone's got their goals and their resolutions sort of identified. I sort of do. By the time this episode is released, I would have at least registered for my first trail event in February. I was scouring the internet and ultra sign up and race organization websites and social media pages for more information on other events that I'm seeing on online, just to find out more about them. There's a thing where, since this is going to be my second year actually participating in some of these events, it's new to me, encountering events that fall on the same time frame as events that I've committed to. So it's sort of like there's a plethora of things to do, but I can only do one. So what I do is I try to place a watch, if you will, some sort of online flag that says, keep me posted, keep me alerted whenever this event is approaching. Even though I won't be able to sign up this year, maybe next year. So if I can get the alerts the following year, it'll help me not forget that it's an event that's a possibility. So yeah, it's and I'm now that I've got my dial tuned in to more of these things. Things that I'm becoming invited to are things that are like fat ass events, right? Again, and those sort of fall in so close to the events that I'm committing to. So it's sort of like I gotta put those sort of on my radar for the future as well, and maybe think about them as options should my original schedule fall off for some reason. Maybe I get injured, or maybe I get sick or something, and I'm itching to do something. I'll tune into those. I'll try to see if those other events are still available, and I'll sign myself up. I'm feeling good. I've noticed that there's some folks that I follow, that I'm friends with, and they're currently dealing with things like the flu and other sort of sicknesses. And my neighbors across the street from me, they talk about how 2017 was a bad year for them for things like the flu. And so right now I'm grateful that I've gone past, the stuff that really took me out in November and the early parts of December. The pink eye and the eye infections and the flu or some sort of like acute bronchitis. I don't know what's going on. One annoying thing I learned was I decided back when I was sick with the pink eye to go to a walk-in sort of a urgent care office, a new one that is associated with the medical group that I go to. Right, I have my usual doctor is part of a medical group, which doesn't matter for my insurance these days, but she's still within network of the medical insurance I have, despite the medical group. At any rate, I go to this walk-in care office, and not even thinking that, whoever I randomly get seen by, I don't think about whether or not that individual is in network or covered within my medical insurance's umbrella of physicians. Turns out I don't think it is, because I received a bill for $129 for that visit. I mean, it's one of those walk-in. It isn't even. I don't know. I guess it's kind of an urgent care. I'm like, what? $129? I get there. I have to wait because this person, who's not really even a the doctor. It's a what do you call it? Sort of a physician's assistant. You know, sort of like the next level down. Someone who is practically a doctor, but I don't know. You know, get eye drops, and then she doesn't even want to stick her tongue depressor down my throat to see if I have or test me to see if I have strep, right? Because I think she's chickened out. So it's like, okay, I see this, and I get a bill of $130. Meanwhile, I think an emergency room visit is $100, and I'm being charged more. I think this is dumb. So I don't know. I'll have to make a phone call or to find out what the fuck, right? Stupid visit to this place. I could have gone to the urgent care that's associated with the medical group my wife participates in, and I'd be billed like $20. So you know what? Sutter, walk-in clinic, fuck you. And if after making my phone call or two, and should it eventually get covered, or should it get covered like I expect it to be, then I'll get back on and say, not fuck you, and I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Stop fucking around with my money. So yeah, there you go. I don't even know where I was getting with that. But yeah, as I was saying, I'm grateful for my health. Yay, knock on wood. I don't have any wood around me. Somebody knock on wood for me. But yeah. So, I think I need to create a resolution to be more mindful. In all these years of sitting behind a microphone talking to you guys, I never really made a large effort to eliminate the ums in my way of speaking through it. I just sort of I do this stream of consciousness type thing, and apparently my stream of consciousness is filled with a lot of the ums. So I want to make that sort of something to be more mindful of as I record and talk to you guys. It's not going to be natural for me, so I'm pretty sure that the episodes are going to sound more unusual than they already are, but I'll work on that.
Health IQ rated 9.6 out of 10 on Trustpilot. Customers love them. Ryan Hall, the fastest marathoner in American history and the only United States athlete to break the 1 hour time for the half marathon. This is what he has to say about Health IQ. Quote, "It's perfect because it's made for people like me with a healthy, active lifestyle." Unquote. The lower heart rates that many pro athletes have can sometimes negatively affect insurance rates. Hall liked the fact that Health IQ used this active lifestyle as an asset in getting a good life insurance rate rather than it being a detriment. He commented that he appreciated how Health IQ made the process easy and simple for him, given how limited his time already was. Health IQ is the fastest growing life insurance company with over $5 billion in coverage. So, like saving money on your car insurance for being a good driver, Health IQ saves you money on your life insurance for living a health-conscious lifestyle. To see if you qualify, get your free quote today at healthiq.com/Ruel or mention the promo code RUEL when you talk to a Health IQ agent today. Hey guys. So, what I'd like to do is remind folks that if you want to share this podcast, the podcast is available not just in the Apple podcast system. What do you call it? It used to be called iTunes. Well, iTunes still exists, but then when it comes to podcast,
they want to use Apple Podcasts, so you can check out a plethora of podcasts at Apple Podcasts. Sounds so redundant, but yeah, it's there. And I also want to point out that you can find the podcast also on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and what are the other ones? There's just a bunch of places, Overcast. There's just a bunch of places where you can catch the podcast. Some folks, like me, for whatever reason, like to look at the podcasts on the Apple TV app, the podcast app on the Apple TV. I don't spend a whole lot of time listening to the podcast through the Apple TV because I could simply have it on my phone and an earbud or something while I'm cooking or, doing chores around the house, taking down the holiday lights and all that stuff. The Google Play Store as well. You can find a podcast there. It's everywhere. Not to mention, you can just hit the player widget on the website at ruelsrunning.com. If you do, share it. That's many ways you can do that. Thank you very much for your support, for your listenership. Let's start out with what's cooking. As I was in the kitchen recently doing something and wondered whether or not I had talked about doing a particular dish. And I have. I really enjoy that standing rib roast, or the prime rib roast that the family did over the holidays. That once we got back from our vacation and holiday, we made it again as a meal prep for the first week of being back at the office. And it is so delicious. And for those who haven't heard that episode of what was actually prepared, it's a prime rib roast. It's not a big one. It's a two-bone prime rib roast. And the one that we had over the holidays, for some reason, was on sale. It was about $30, which was or $40. Great. I picked up the second one post-holidays, post-vacation, and I bought it for about $50. Also, when I asked for the cut of meat, the butcher said that if you take a look at it, you can see that it's sort of one section of the meat, the prime rib. I don't even know what part of the animal it is, but I was basically given a cut that had the least amount of bone and mostly meat. So I'm sure that played into the weight and the resulting cost of the cut. But that's okay, because $50 for 2 people over a good part of a week, you could share it, and it's well worth it. But it was prime rib that I've allowed to sit covered over the counter to get to room temp, so that when I do roast it doesn't have to contend with the heat on the exterior and a lot of coldness inside the meat. So I let it sit in room temp, covered, with a whole lot of kosher salt spread around it to add flavor. And that was done for several hours. And then to prepare the roast itself, I just I jabbed like 4 holes into the meat, towards the center of the meat, and inserted garlic cloves. Then I rubbed a butter herb mixture all around the roast. It's fantastic. It's like tarragon, basil, I think, and thyme and rosemary, salt and pepper. and I put that on the roasting rack. I had preheated the oven to 450. I inserted the electronic meat thermometer in the thing, and when the oven got to temp 450, I put the roast in and set the digital alarm for the thermometer to cue me in when the temperature of the inside temperature of the meat got to 140, 141, something around there. And the thing roasted in the oven at 450 for the first 15 minutes, and then I Then I set the temperature, brought it down to 350. I never opened the oven the whole time. Didn't want to mess with it, and it probably took an hour and a half for it to reach that temp. And once it came out, carefully removed the roast from the oven, covered the whole thing with foil, and allowed to rest for at least 15 minutes. But what I did was, I took as soon as the roast, because the roasting was done in the evening, I took the roast out of the oven, covered up with tin foil, and the family took a drive, went to like a store or something, did an errand or two, got back and enjoyed some of that roast and carved the rest and saved as much. When I carved it, I had a portion of that herb butter mixture that I had covered the thing and roasted it in. I kept a portion of that so that as I carved the meat on the board, I had that remaining butter herb mixture smeared all over the board as well, so that as the meat got carved, it fell on that butter, and then as I allowed the meat to cool, it just sat in all that butter. And then when I packed it up to store it, I made sure that I took all of the slices and that they all had contact with that herb butter, and I saved all the juices and the remaining butter on the board and dumped it in with all of the cuts, and that made for some perfect lunches for my wife, and it made for some perfect dinners for me in the evenings. And when it got to a point where there wasn't enough for the both of us to last through the week, I stepped aside and left the rest for her. I want her to enjoy all of that delicious, healthy prime rib, seasoned so beautifully and marinated so wonderfully in that butter. So that's what was cooking. But there was other stuff that we did over the holiday. We did stuff for the family gathering, like the paella. We did the paella, which is a Spanish dish, and it went so well that before we went on vacation, we made another batch of the paella, just because we had ingredients and we enjoyed it so much. And yes, paella is rice, and it is a grain, and it is not compliant on an NSNG lifestyle. So this was another one of those life into living dishes where I have to decide whether or not it's something that I want to get into, and whether or not it'll impact my health or my goals. So we did that, and the difference with this one is it didn't have chorizo, it had shrimp and chicken. The first time we did it, we had the chorizo and the chicken. This time around, we had the chicken and the shrimp. So it was great. So good. We had to store it in the freezer prior to going on our recent trip, so that it wouldn't go to waste. I just have a hard time, all that prep to make the dish and having it go to waste. And the shrimp's in there. The shrimp's delicious, and don't want that to go to waste. So took this rice dish and I stuck it in the freezer. When we came back from vacation, and when I remembered that we had it, I just transferred it out of the freezer and into the refrigerator, allowed it to thaw over like a day, and it was good to go to reheat without ruining it. I could reheat it, covered in some wet paper, covered with a wet paper towel in the microwave, or to just put back on the stovetop and warm that way. So I had a little bit of that recently. It was wonderful. and don't have to feel like it's waste. For that particular dish, for the holidays, we did something where we ordered a type of rice off of the internet that seemed to be appropriate for a paella dish. I don't really know the difference between that and any of the other rice that's available in the stores here. But it just added, knowing that it got shipped all the way from like Spain or something, it just gave it a little bit more, like a authenticity of some sorts, It's even the use of saffron. I don't ordinarily cook with, saffron, and we had to find that over the break, so that we have it for the dish. So that's the other thing that I was cooking, and I was finishing up the remainder of the paella last night, and I thought about, wow, this is really awesome. I mean, something that we're not going to make too frequently, because we don't want it to sort of be, something, when you have something really good over and over and over again, it just doesn't become so special. So the paella, we're not going to do it as often, and same with the prime rib. How dare I say that? But I want to say, I don't know, I'd love to eat prime rib all the time, but it does get expensive. But I do get concerned that it just won't be as special. I really get so excited when these dishes are prepared, because they're so flavorful, they're so delicious, and usually it's wrapped around a special season or occasion. So that's what's cooking. Let me know what's cooking in your kitchen. Now, I talked about recently that the family had gone on a trip for the New Year's, and it was a whole lot of fun. I got to talk to several people about the trip, and it's, again, I've talked about it before. The family takes these trips. We try to use, we're trying to take advantage of this Disneyland annual pass. It's the first time the family has ever gotten it, and it's gonna be, it's gonna be expiring soon. So, we wanted to take advantage of it, and we've learned over, the years, and as the family grew, how we could best operate going on these trips. So, when I hear conversations about people and their fears of doing Disneyland, because there's this big fear of the long lines and the crowds, and it's insane, and others have issues with the fact that it's a place that promotes, it could like hook a young mind into the whole Disney thing, like hooking him into a character, and then as a child grows, all they care about is that type of stuff, which I'm not seeing as a problem. And if it becomes a problem, it might just be a parenting style. From my experience, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. My kids, as they grow, and my kids are pretty young right now, 4, 7, and 9, right? They have interests, and then the interests change. As much as I'd love for them to stick to one thing, as they develop and grow, naturally their interests change. And at one period, one of my sons was into Monster Jam, the monster trucks from Hot Wheels, and so we had several of those items and toys around. He would never want to attend an event. We've looked at the events for those things, but if anything, to just go and attend sort of the showing where you could just kind of walk around and look at the vehicles. But that was beyond what he cared about with as far as Monster Jam and monster trucks. He really enjoyed the experience of seeing them in a store and being able to take a Hot Wheels Monster Jam toy home. He didn't really care about seeing them in real life. And for those who know, going to those events, they get crazy loud, So the next best thing was just to watch videos on YouTube of his favorite Monster Jam vehicles do their thing, and it's that itself, the Monster Jam and those trucks, it's amazing. And I kind of love what how that's come, or become its thing, beyond back when I was a kid. Bigfoot was the thing. I remember Bigfoot even had its own cartoon. I never watched it, but the whole entertainment and branding aspect of Monster Jam, it was awesome. But what I was trying to say is, my kid can care less about Monster Jam now. He's much older. He's gotten into other things like Five Nights at Freddy or Voltron. It just shifts. And so the trick is, for parents out there who you probably can relate, which when you have little kids, is when you participate in supporting whatever interests your kid, you want to make sure that you don't participate in shifting that interest. Say, what I'm saying is, when the holidays rolled around, we knew what our kids were into, so that if any of our friends and family wanted to know, what our kids were into and liked, so that they can participate in, gift giving and whatnot, we told them, and let's say it's, Transformers. Like, oh yeah, the boys are into Transformers right now, so if you do feel like giving them anything for the holidays, he likes Transformers, and he likes, this character, and the other one likes this character. So what happens is, leading up through the holidays and the gift giving season, don't want to participate in shifting that interest, so that when it does come down to receiving a gift and seeing what it is, you don't, the last thing you want is that kid to open up the gift and be like, oh, yeah, I'm not into Transformers anymore. I'm into something else. So you sort of want to, as a parent, want to make the gift giving and the gift receiving, you want to support it so that it's special for everybody, it's meaningful for everybody. Yeah. But we, as far as going on these trips, we've figured out what works for us, and what works for us is, financially, if we find a nice place to rent outside of the park, you save money. And if it's a place that has a free breakfast, a big spread as well every morning, it saves money. And if it's a place that has a kitchen, we can save money, because we could always just grab a bunch of groceries nearby, and I could do a lot of meal prep that'll last throughout the trip. Fortunately, the parks allow you to take food in and drinks in now. For a while, you were only subject to what was in and around the park. Now, I can just prep stuff in the kitchen at the place we stay at, pack it up. We still push around a stroller, so that's extra, cargo space that we can have. Yeah, I know, 4, 6, and 9. 4, 7, and 9. So, my youngest is 4, and she's getting bigger, and, she's getting big to carry, and I every once in a while, she wants me to just pick her up, and when I'm out and about in a place like Disneyland, I don't want to carry you, child. I would rather just push you on this stroller. And other families, they do things like wagons and stuff. There's these cool, large foldable wagons, big wheels, big cargo space, and kids can hang out there with all their junk and the parents' junk, and the kids can just like flop over and pass out. So those are neat. But we have the stroller, and it's cool. I mean, sometimes I find myself sitting in that thing. I can barely fit my hips through the thing, but I could make it work. And if I need to take a load off, I just, tap the brakes on that thing and sit on it. It's a double, so we've had it for a long time. It's a double side by side stroller. We've had it for a while, so those things are helpful. Taking the hike from the hotel to the park and on the way back. At the end of the day, we just found out what works for us, and we were able to get the kids the experience of being out in large groups, a large population surrounding it. My initial thought and feeling when the idea of making these trips came up, my wife wanted to do these trips, my initial feelings were anxiety, and discomfort, because, raising like 3 babies, you just sort of want to be where everything is accessible and not have to do a lot of effort. But I had to do 2 things, right? One is there was 2 things that I need to be aware of that made me okay. Actually 3. 3 things. The first thing that made it okay for me to change my mindset about taking family on trips like this to Disneyland, where, my natural mode would want to just sit still, don't go anywhere. It's the least amount of effort, and I can find comfort in not doing anything, But 3 things changed me. I changed my mindset. The first was, we don't have each other for too long in this lifetime, right? My family, my spouse, just ourselves. We never know when it's gonna end, right? It can end very quickly. So to be able to take time away from the office and school and spend time as a family, it's great. And what to do, you think about things like a park for the kids, something that's age appropriate. So I didn't want to lose out on creating memories that hopefully the kids can take with them as they go on through their lives, right? So there's that. That's one reason. Another reason was I needed to come out of hiding, the shell that I carry around. And I knew that if I just said screw it and just try something uncomfortable and view it as an adventure, then you can walk away with it, not just with memories, but I could surprise myself and also potentially have things to talk about for the podcast, right? Let's see what happens kind of attitude. And I still feel that way with other things. This last trip, my wife wanted to visit someplace in LA, and I'm like, I don't want to have to navigate through, the city streets and the whatnot. But I figured, well, if we can get an understanding that, it may take a time and we shouldn't stress over any sort of traffic situation, then we know what we're getting ourselves into. Because it becomes more about the journey to wherever we think we want to go rather than the thing itself. So, if we can get an understanding that let's just make the trip enjoyable, and then if we get there, we get there, great. So there were some things that we did, like we visited the Grove, which is supposed to be a nice place to visit, and we picked that place as a place to rendezvous with some really close friends who are practically family. Had a nice lunch. So once we got there, then my anxiety about how to get there and what is it all about was gone, because not a big deal. So from this point on, it becomes, I can do this type of thing more often because I know what it's all about now. The other was make a side trip over to visit Huntington Beach, and my memories of visiting other beaches in LA or Orange County or wherever the heck they are, it always was sort of a hectic situation, and so that brought on anxiety about, if we do that side trip, what's it going to be like, and is it going to be crowded, is it going to be tons of no places to park, or are we going to be caught up in traffic, are we going to be spending more money than we want to? So, but it was like, fuck it, did it, and like, I could do this again, so, yeah. And then the third thing that sort of shifted my mind about going on these trips and being with the family was, I can do it. I'm able to do it. I'm physically able to do it. Something about learning to handle myself physically, mentally on a trail run or a long run, right? Somehow has transferred over to other parts of my life, and I could do a trip like this, and I'm fit enough to handle it. I won't be wiped out, exhausted, or whatever, and if it gets sort of like tedious, then I can handle it as well, because what's more tedious than being out on a run for several hours by yourself. So I see a lot of people in the park who struggle with that because they're not they're not better conditioned. I'll be nice about it. They're not better conditioned to do it, but they're there. So the way that they get around that is they'll sit in a motorized chair and scoot themselves along. So it's funny. I had a conversation with Vinny Tordrich while I was pushing a double stroller one morning to hit the park and approach the big crowd of folks in line to try and get through the security. And he's like, it's too bad I can't record these conversations I have with Vinny when I talk to him on the phone. But it's sort of like, is it really what folks are saying, where you go there and there's just people who are roving around in motorized scooters and chairs? And I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's a sad thing to say, but it is, because day to day you might not see it, but then when you go on trips like this to places like Disneyland is a destination place. People come from all around, people from all different walks of life, and so you'll see that slice of the population, right? You'll see that slice that's, okay, this is where they're at in their life. And I told them, it's not just the folks who struggle with their weight that are on that thing, those motorized chairs, but you'll even see people who do it because they're lazy. So it's not a physical thing. Now it's sort of like, how do you say it? It's a laziness thing, right? For the folks who don't appear to be struggling with their weight whatsoever. I told them, as we were on our way to this park having this conversation, a gal who looked like she was in her teens was, sitting on one of these motorized chairs, crossing the crosswalk, had her leg crossed, her elbow on her knee, and was texting as she motorized her way over the crosswalk. I'm like, sure, she could have been transporting the vehicle to a family member or a friend who needs it, but it's just something that you'll see. You'll see older people who, in my view, aren't morbidly obese, who should be able to physically handle walking around. But I think what happens is these motorized vehicles become so available, and people just find it as a way to just take a load off, That's how they want to enjoy the experience. I don't want to walk. I'd rather just sit. and if there's going to be a difficult time finding a place to sit, then I'm going to find something to sit on that'll take me around. And the bonus is, and I get it, and the bonus is, people will probably give me a pass, will be treating me special because I'm sitting on these things, because it'll look like I have a medical issue. I mean, I saw, it's like a biker gang, like 5 motorized vehicles right next to each other, and these 5 folks all just sort of sitting around it, standing around it. See, that's the thing. You'll see them stand up and get around, and then they'll get back into their motorized chair. It's a convenience thing, not just a thing for folks who really have a medical condition. So when I was having that conversation with Vinny, I was like, yep, it's sad to say that's what you see. And he was really surprised to hear. He's like, tell me you're not kidding. Tell me that's not a joke. When I told him about, even if it wasn't a motorized vehicle, it was just a wheelchair that you can rent from, the park. You see 2 perfectly young, individuals, one pushing the other in a wheelchair, at one part of the day, and then in a later part of the day, they've traded places, He's like, what? Yeah, it's a place and a time when, it can be an opportunity for folks to actually get some exercise in this day and age when you can just be sitting on your butt all the time, getting from point A to point B, or just sitting in your home or in your room or in your apartment and doing nothing but playing video games or being on the computer. It's a time to be out, right? And on your feet. But nope. People in their PJs pushing each other on a wheelchair and trading places at a Disneyland. That happens, and there's a lot of it. And I'm not sure if I told this story once. It can be dangerous for folks, right? I mean, I know what it's like to be pushing around a double-wide stroller in a crowd, and Disneyland changes their access time every time because they have to corral folks and they have to shift traffic because things like parades happen. And when that happens, everybody's on the sidewalk, they're off of Main Street, and you've got to navigate through the dense crowd. People being upset in the happiest place on earth. People getting upset because they're dealing with anxiety in such a densely populated place. And pushing strollers with babies. People get rude. It's just insane. But imagine being stuck with a motorized chair in those dense situations. Just because you're in a chair doesn't automatically mean everyone's gonna, like, the sea of people is gonna part, and you have, like, free space to travel. You don't. It doesn't happen. You end up just, inch by inch, scooting that thing, and it becomes a burden and impossible at that point. But there was a time when I was with my family at the Grand Californian, and there's a way to access the downtown Disney section, and there's a set of stairs, like 2 or 3 stairs, so at this one section, at this one hallway, but on the side there's a ramp. And this poor woman was trying to use her motorized chair to get around, and it was kind of crowded. Something happened. She ended up misjudging her position and probably not familiar with the controls on the thing. She ended up brushing up against the door, which was propped against the wall, because there's like, you imagine a door left open so that folks can access, and it was kind of like pinned against the wall, and it had this metal bar horizontally across it so that people, when it had to be open, you just push the bar and the thing opens up. Anyways, she misjudged her position, and she ended up skimming up against that door handle, and so that brushing up and basically hitting the wall or the door caused her to panic, and then she hit a switch, or somehow a switch got hit, and it forced her vehicle to move forward and faster. And it was headed straight for those steps, down these 2 steps on this hallway, which had pedestrians or people, including a child and on an umbrella stroller, nearby. So when that thing lost control, quickly people around, had to use their energy to try and hold that thing from stopping. I mean, from mowing down people. It started to mow down, and people just had to like would get bumped and then forced off to the side. And I had family that was there who was at risk of being harmed as well. And I was one of the people trying to hold back the vehicle from moving forward. And the rider, the woman, poor thing, was just sitting there like not doing anything, as if she might as well have been passed out, but she was conscious, but everyone had a hand on her thing and was stopping it from moving, and she just kind of sat there, just waited for people to take care of her. And she didn't even say a word. I don't know if she was in shock or what. And then eventually, I told one of the other people, reach for the thing to switch it off. And once that happened, then, I got my family clear from it all, and we was like, let's just go on our way, and everyone else can figure it out with her. So, geez, man, it just almost hurt people. Dangerous. But that's that. Despite that, and those are those things where, had I not had, the guts to just go on these ideas of these trips that I feel initially are uncomfortable, I wouldn't experience and I wouldn't be able to talk about on the podcast, and I think on that same trip, saw a couple of celebrities, so pretty cool. Who did you see? Saw Ryan Reynolds and saw, what was his name? Tyson something or other. So Ryan Reynolds was the Green Lantern, and Tyson was on was it Transformers and Fast and Furious? I didn't meet him and shake hands. Ryan Reynolds was actually trying to hide. He had like a coat with his collar pulled up and a cap. And when I saw him and he saw that I saw him, he had this look of, someone recognized me, and I didn't. Right? But, I just kept on walking by, and then I started hearing talk about, did you see Ryan Reynolds? Did you see Ryan Reynolds? I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. Yeah, okay, now I know. On another trip, saw, what was his name? Travis Barker. That was cool. He and his wife were being, accompanied by one of the staff. Saw him. So it's kind of neat, trying to think who else I saw out and about. Yeah. So that's that. I mean, so if anybody can relate to me as far as being like a scaredy cat about going out and about and taking the family places, I get it, but shit, man, life's too short. And I don't have any bright ideas on where else to go. My wife does a lot of these coordination and planning, which is awesome, because without it, I'd have a dull life. The family would have a dull life. And, I just want to participate and be a part of it all, because, life's too short, man. Spend time with your families. Spend time with the ones you love, even if it means you're going to have to be, making a little bit of an effort. Because it's temporary. Yeah, that's that.
Excuse me. So something about this past trip
this is all, and this is related to, I guess, health in a way, right? I guess I just want to sympathize for the young folks who struggle with their weight, because I feel like I can really relate, because I was that guy, throughout middle school to the tail end of elementary school, being made fun of, not by just people around me, like, classmates and stuff, but being made fun of by, my own family and relatives, and during this last trip, this was actually before heading over to Huntington Beach, wanted to make sure that if in case we got caught up in traffic, that we didn't have to worry about using the bathroom. So made a pit stop at a McDonald's restaurant, not to buy anything, just to use the restroom. And I had my daughter in hand and my youngest son with me. Let's go to the restroom, because the other one my oldest was fine. Walked into the restroom in a McDonald's, and it's one of those restrooms where it's just one toilet stall and one urinal. And, when it went over, and there was a kid standing in front of the urinal. Okay, I didn't even pay attention to him. Walked straight behind him, which was just about where the door was to get to the toilet stall, and it was locked. Somebody was there, and my son was sort of like doing the pee-pee dance. He wanted to go potty. I'm like, oh great. So then I was like, son, you gotta hold it. We're gonna have to wait our turn. So then we stepped away from it. We stepped far away from, the dude next to the urinal and the door for the toilet stall. And as we stood our distance, we realized that the kid at the urinal wasn't taking a leak. He was throwing up. He had his forearm resting over the plumbing, over the urinal, and he had his head bowed down, and he was like spitting and bleh. And then I'm like, oh geez. I'm like, Makoa, I'm my son, right? I'm like, dude, and at that point realized that there had been vomit on the floor. There was vomit on the floor, and we had stepped on it. The kid had somehow gotten his vomit on the floor. It was almost like he was trying to get to the toilet stall so he can throw up in the toilet, right? And the thing was, on the verge of he was on the verge of blowing out, and then he realized, like, the door had been locked. This is me doing forensics, right? Or me trying to do, like, imagine what happened. The kid felt sick. He tried to open up the toilet stall. It was locked, and then it just started to pour out. And then the only other option was the sink or the urinal, and the closest option was, so all he had to do was turn his head and take a half a step to the urinal. And so he had spilled on the floor, and now he was just continuing on the mess in the urinal, and when I told my kids, like, whatever you do, we're going to have to clean off the bottom of your shoes because we stepped on the vomit. And the kid is like, oh, he kind of looked over, like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, don't worry about it, just, hope you feel better, man. And that was it. It was like, that kid is me, right? When I would say, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, I'm that kid, and no judging, nothing, just, I feel for the guy, right? He's sick, and he's a little overweight, and it's just me relating, nothing about trying to save anybody's life or give advice or trying to figure out why he is the way he is, because I lived my own experience. I just felt like, man, I just hope he felt better. Hope he was going to be okay. And he had like puke on his arm. He was just a mess. And and the thing started to reek, and we didn't want to stick around. So I was like, okay, this isn't going to work out. So I went back out, told my wife, here, take our daughter. you're gonna have to take her into the restroom because the men's restroom is disgusting right now. There's a kid he's having a hard time. He had vomited all over the place. And then my son, like, let's just walk over to the back of the parking lot where there are hedges and there's like cam bark and mulch and dirt and stuff. We can trample all over that stuff and just, scratch the bottom of our shoes and our feet and hopefully get all of that nastiness cleaned off the bottom of our shoe and, just pee into the trees. Did that. So, it's not a fun story. It's just a disgusting story. And it's a story that, feels like, I'm that guy. What's wrong with me? Right? It's just me feeling sad about others. This is not a good podcast. What's wrong with me? This is a horrible podcast. I need to talk about something funny and enjoyable. Oh my God. I gotta change the subject. Oh my God.
So, hug your friends, eat something delicious, and go run something. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Ruel's Running Podcast with Ruel. If you like what you just heard, share it with your friends and your enemies. Also, be sure to check out the site over at ruelsrunning.com. This has been another Coffee with Heavy Cream production. Join us next time for another silly show of Ruel's Running Podcast.